They're on you.
Okay, and I don't hear an echo now, so that's good. So it is now 6 p.m. on Tuesday, September 12th, and I'm gonna call to order our meeting of the ad hoc facilities assessment conversation, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So present are Arthur Christensen, Laura Rodriguez, Michelle Gazette Cunningham, Superintendent Stevens. So
I can start.
why don't you jump right in?
So, I'd like to start first with the RFP that came through, and I'm just gonna let you do
I'll
that.
take it.
Yeah, perfect. So that way. View screen, sorry, give me a second. So the RFP that went out. I think this is my first single call. I went back through it, and wanted to share, so it's on the big screen for you if it's easier to look at. It went through all of the background, the format for submissions, the request for information, our background, what's happened, the history of the facilities. And then this is where it started getting into the meat, and I highlighted the items that, before I went through the proposal we got, I went back to this and reread this. And then went back into the proposal that came in. So a comprehensive facilities master plan that accommodates enrollment projections, a 10-year capital improvement CIP plan, outlines the education vision goal and implementation and funding plan with collaborative stakeholder agreement. That was kind of the start of the scope. And then all of these things that we highlighted, so that were, I think, the primaries, the master plan, that there should be a comprehensive review assessment, and intended improvements for the existing buildings. And that included all of these things under master plan. So facility analysis, basically soup to nuts, everything, heating, cooling, lighting, everything that's highlighted there is what we would want in the review. Code compliance, all of those things. The next section was adequate facilities to promote student learning and development. And that tied to kind of matching ed specs with the long-term capital improvement plans that we were looking for. A schedule, which really matters. And then coordinating that, the work scopes into real projects, not just going, well, we could do this during this time, actually setting some schedules. And then the estimates. The educational program section was very short, obviously, because we already did ed specs. And then the CIP was the develop a 10-year plan. Okay. The very bottom of this was small and was conceptual schematic design. And that was really geared towards, we have ed specs, how does that kind of fit into the big picture of what they're gonna make recommendation around, and how are they gonna group projects together? So the rest of this schedule, evaluation and award of a contract, all that stuff was just typical insurance, that was all typical. That was what we put out for an RFP. So it was really, the bulk is a 10-year CIP plan, evaluate everything, group projects together and let us know. Okay. We received one proposal from QA&M Architecture. And obviously I reviewed their entire document, I'm sure you did as well. What I want to focus on in there, and it's the only proposal we got, which I'm a little bit surprised. What I want to focus on there is, because honestly, it's 110 pages, but it's like, I'll be honest, these things come in there, there's a lot of stock stuff that's in here for their experience, which is typical, and most of the time, there's probably maybe 6 or 8 pages that's like, hey, let's really pay attention to this. So their letter and background, firm overview, like, thank you very much. I'll be honest with you, the section I honed in on right away was the project approach, because to me, that's where our RFP should come to life. And it starts on 2 after this. Sorry if I'm making you busy. Project approach, it really starts on this page. They have a design process, understanding the challenges, and if you go to concept, design, approach, maintain current facility, I think this is where it started to come together, what we're looking for. They put in here lots of points on community feedback. there was a discussion of ed specs, of developing ed specs.
Yeah,
That was not what we had in the RFP at all.
Okay.
Their approach pointed out concept designs to maintain our current facilities, renovate as new and build new. That was not, build new and renovate was not part of this RFP.
okay,
So, my feeling was when I looked at this, the concept design approach that was around maintain current facility, that chunk is really what we're looking for. The rest of that they put in, I don't know if they did it because they have some prior experience with us. They did some, and if you look at that plan right there, they did that plan connecting with the SBC. So I'm going to say, I think they made some assumptions about what we were looking for. I don't know. My first thing when I read this was like, did we miss the boat on the RFP? And I went back and reread the RFP again, and I don't think we did. I asked James Marshall the same thing. I'm like, you know, the response we got was around these three things. Was that part of our response? I didn't see that in there. Am I missing something? And he thought the same thing. So I'll say my piece and I think you can chime in, but my suggestion really would be around with the one submission we got. Is to, because we only got one submission, is have this group figure out where we want to go. But my suggestion would be bring this group in for an interview and just ask them some of these point blank questions. Like, you know, they focused on, and the example I'm going to give is like there were 15 items. They focused on item 15, which for us was like 5%, and they made that 5% everything for them. Whereas we're looking at Riley items 1 through 14 as the primary, and that's where they spent a lot of time in this, like around renovate is new, around public approval for referendum. That was not what this RFP stated at all. So I gotta assume again that they were making some assumptions. I think it'd be worthwhile to bring them in, ask some questions to say, okay, talk to us about your proposal, because what we asked for was seemingly quite different except for one section. See what they have to say, and then see if there's any modifications to their proposal price-wise, just based upon capital improvement projects. And really what we're trying to target. My feeling is, and I had to ask this because I went into Erica and Donna today, and we had a question about this. Typically, if you had multiple bidders on this, we would do interviews, but if they were one of the bidders, I think you might toss this simply because there's so much other things in there that we're just not looking for. But their price, I'm really surprised. I thought it was really cheap, actually. I thought what we were asking for was gonna be 6 figures, to be honest with you. So did Jim. And so, do they really have an understanding of what we're looking for? I think is the idea of why we need to interview them and ask, and to find out what we're asking for. Does that scope match what they're thinking, and does the price still match? If it's higher, I think we have to repost this. If it's lower, our understanding is they're still gonna meet the scope, they're just adjusting what their product is. And when you create your contract, it would really be around, if you did a contract with them. Sorry, I'm looking at 3 things. It would really be around this. This CIP section that was detailing all of the, you know, basically the facility study portion, lump projects together, consider the ed specs. When you're doing these 3 projects, can you improve anything on the ed spec side as well as you do those things? If those are real considerations we can do, I'm just not sure how they jumped to where they jumped.
I have an idea with that. I don't know, you can finish it.
No, I'm done. That's based upon what I read, and that's gonna be my suggestion. I just don't think what came in this, it was like, I'll say a half a page of really what we're looking for, and the rest of it was things that were not.
So I went through this and what I noticed was actually towards the end, when they go through all their references, they've worked with a lot of companies that did stuff for Holland Center before with the SBC. So my thought of this, and it's almost kind of cynical of me to think this way, but it's almost like they thought, okay, well, we've already partnered with a bunch of people that did this, let's just throw all this stuff back at them and just, be like, okay, we'll take it, whatever. Probably gave very little, look at the actual, was actually in the RFP and was like, oh, it's Willington again, give them all the stuff.
Yeah.
When I saw the renovated new and the new facility existing site, I was like, we've been through this, I don't know why this is on there. And I went back and read the RFP and I'm like, that's not on there, so I think they kind of took it upon themselves to say, hey, we've done this before, just send it back out.
So I'm glad you answered a lot of my questions as I was reading through it. But my thought was, because of the way that they phrase this, starting with maintain current facility, and then when you get to the paragraph, it is our experience that in facilities such as, they're basically saying to maintain current facility is not the best option. They're looking at it as being more expensive, so it's like they're gonna throw back the other ones as don't forget these other options, but when I got to the ed specs part, I was like, oh, please, we don't need to do this again.
And I don't know how much of this is stock.
That's what I was
They
thinking,
do-
it might just
They
be,
do,
yeah,
I mean, there's people that all they do is they look at RFPs, they pull the RFPs. Every day they see what's out there and they just, it's like literally 100 pages that are just lock, stock and barrel, like that's the same thing you get, everybody gets it. And if I can get a snapshot of what they're looking for, I don't know if that's what they did here,
I don't know.
but we're expecting, I think, a little bit more detail. And that's why you might get that out of an interview. And then build your contract, because I do feel like part of what they proposed is what we're looking for. But we would want to make sure, number one, the price reflects that. And number two, that when we draft the contract, that it's not what they have in here. That it's
Right, we don't want.
really the pulling language out of our RFP, what are the producibles, what products are we expecting to see if we sign a contract with QAM?
It does seem to me that the price might come down, given that they proposed more than we were expecting. So I think that's,
work.
yeah, so it would appear to me that we would be asking them for less work than they proposed. Unless this is a standard bid, they certainly do a lot bigger projects than this. This is kind of small beans right now. So it could also be that it was done in August during vacation time, and I will give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe somebody was subbing in while somebody was on vacation. But I think having an interview with them, with the committee, not waiting a full month to the next board meeting, but having us come together and have a conversation with them, as soon as we can get them in would be useful. But I think you should tell them upfront exactly what our concerns were.
Yeah.
Send them the link to this.
And because they're alone, you're not giving away information.
Yeah,
If there were two vendors,
Exactly,
you'd be in
it'd
a
be very
different
different,
situation.
but, we certainly need more information before we could decide to go ahead with this.
Yeah, the only concern I have is, do they really understand? I know you just said the price could go down. The concern I have, and I think Jim shares the same concern, is do they really understand how much in depth we want to go to make sure we have a good grasp on what needs to be done and what it's going to take. Not just you need a new boiler, it is X number of dollars. If you're gonna do piping all the way through, what is that gonna cost?
So that was my second point, is that if it was in fact done by someone with less experience because they were covered during vacation, maybe then we need to give them a chance to really look at what we want and give us an example, maybe a sample of what they've done for someone else that might be similar. Because I always like to know that they've done something related and not just build new.
I went back to look at the facility study that was done 17. The last one, I don't remember.
The prior report?
Yeah, prior.
16, 17.
Yeah, when that report was done, that contract was very simple. There was not a lot of language in it, and I would want to be explicit about what we would expect coming out of this.
Yeah.
Because I think that's important for moving forward, sharing with the public that, projects. The piece I did like that they had in there around the community portion of it is I do think that from the CIP perspective, they pulled together all sorts of projects and they group things together. I would like them to be able to connect with the public to explain why. We are putting these projects together. Here's why I think they make sense. You wouldn't want to do X before you did Y, because I'm gonna be honest, every time it comes from me, you know, I'm not a plumbing expert. I'm not, you know, I gain as much information as I can. But I do think some of that community portion would be good in a final presentation from that, if they were awarded the project.
But I would also want that report in writing,
Oh,
not
absolutely.
just a presentation.
Right, correct. Yes, agreed.
Okay, next question I have is one of timing,
Mhm.
because you know, it hardly feels like summer is over.
Not quite.
It's, my air conditioner is on in my house
20:30.
tonight, trying to take some
September
humidity out,
23rd.
right? But, this was a little delay in what we had wanted, you know, in terms of that, so I'm hoping we can get them in within the next 2 weeks and, have a discussion if we're gonna move ahead or if we're gonna go back out, because we have to go back out. It's gonna be another 4 weeks, maybe 4 weeks after that, so,
So. Let's talk about that, because I think that's important. So the next board meeting is October 10th, right?
Okay.
So if we interview them. And you're like, this is not what we're looking for right now, they're looking for a different scope. Or the price goes up. Do you want to go back to the full board, or I don't think we have to wait to the full board, we could just. If we wanted to make any kind of modifications to our RFP. We could then just make those modifications and repost without going to the board. The board's job, the full board's job in this is really, if there's going to be an award. To award and give them the information.
and they've already voted to have us move to, you know, produce the RFP, they already got it, so I think we're already authorized to do this.
So regardless. You
Yeah,
know, you wouldn't have, it would speed things up for a potential November. If you sent it back out,
okay,
is my point, because 2 weeks matters.
Yeah.
So if we interviewed them within 2 weeks, and everything was great, you were happy with their responses, and you wanted to draft a contract, you bring that to your October board meeting, right?
right,
And it's not even drafting a contract, you would want to accept the proposal, the board has to send this to town meeting. So it's gotta go from the Board of Ed to, I believe, the Selectman's office to request a town meeting, because that money is not budgeted, it's within that $1 million frame. And if that's where it's gonna, unless you have the pocket money, I don't know about. That's
none of
what,
us are volunteering.
You could use-
Sorry.
you-
I was a teacher.
you could use your non-lapsing fund, I'm not gonna suggest that. You could do that, but right now I'm not gonna suggest that. If. It would then have to go for approval, and you know, going to town meeting can take weeks as well. So that's why I say it could matter. In the end, for me, I'd love to see some of this help us with budgeting in the upcoming year, I just don't know how realistic it's gonna be.
So I knew that this part of the process, is there something against doing things in parallel? Like if we kept the RFP posted or reposted the RFP and did the interview or tried to get an interview in parallel, is that allowed or no?
It's generally bad form,
Okay.
because you're kind of playing them against each other, so
Yeah, I get
it's
it.
not illegal, you know, but it ethically, morally feels, it feels a little icky,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is, if we do repost, I will reach out to some firms. And just say, hey, because I could
Now that
name,
you're back from vacation.
I could name three, I expected more, I didn't, I'm really surprised we got one, I expected, to be honest with you, I expected three. A minimum of three. And one we've already used, one we've worked with, and here's another one we've worked with, so I expected three, and I can't speak to why, I don't know. But again, I can draft some questions, I can send questions to you. If you wanna weigh in on anything, you know, making any adjustments, I can contact, QA&M. Schedule a meeting, I'll have Brendan do that, find out your availability. I would think it'd be good to have them in the room. I don't wanna do that,
Yeah.
I don't like those over Zoom, to be honest with you.
No.
So if we can get them in the room, and it wouldn't be a posted meeting. At least it wasn't last time, because it's like seen as a negotiation, if they're giving away trade secrets, I think. If they were sharing what they were gonna do, prices in there,
Okay,
I can find that out for sure,
yeah, you can double check.
I can ask the attorney that question.
It might be that that part of the presentation is not, but then the discussion afterwards. So after they leave, we would, like, they would come from 6 to 6:30, and then the posted point is 6:30, we have the conversation that's open, so there might be like a twofer.
Yep.
Because I would think that once they're, because we're not gonna have that conversation with them in the room,
Correct.
right? So they're gonna come and leave, and then we have the conversation, which is basically a committee meeting. So it would be posted the same way a committee meeting would be. But I think it would mean that, we'd have to look to see whether or not the first one, not only is it posted, is it open for the public or not?
I'll find out,
So that's really the question.
and I'll send you some questions.
Questions for us to ask.
Ask them.
Okay.
Yeah. Cause honestly, I've been in a few of these before, and I don't want them to do a presentation. I can't stand it, and you get, it's 15 minutes of that sharing.
Especially if you're just
the same
gonna read
document.
everything in the document. you
That's
read.
like, let's get right to it. Here's
You
what
read
you
your
presented.
112 pages, let's cut to page 52.
Yeah, let's get to what we're looking for, and I think we can be direct when we set up the interview, we can say, I'll share that with them. What we're looking for, and then let them, see if they're gonna do anything and how they're gonna respond, they really understand what we're looking for.
I think that sounds like a good plan.
Yes.
I think that was our only item of business for this group,
It is.
so, might be helpful though if we give you some dates, so, but we can adjourn this meeting. Going forward for the next half hour, because it's a separate meeting invite, right?
Correct.
For the regular board meeting, so for those people, who joined us on Zoom, you're gonna have to log out and log back in using the link on the agenda, not the link on this agenda, but the link on the regular meeting agenda. This way the recordings come out separately, otherwise creates chaos. This is our first meeting, hybrid, so, let's try to keep the chaos to a minimum.
Please.
Okay, so, we don't have to even vote to adjourn for this
No.
committee meeting. Okay. 6:23, thanks, and we hope to